This is Talking Mule Deer with your hosts Steve Belinda and Jody Stemler. Talking Mule Deer takes you on a journey to learn more about the Mule Deer Foundation, mule deer and black-tailed deer biology and management, tips and tactics for hunting, conservation issues, and even features some of our corporate and celebrity partners. Now, let's start talking mule deer. Hey, we're talking mule deer from the 2019 Western Hunting and Conservation Expo. This is Jody Stemler.
And I'm Steve Belinda, Jody's co-host. And today we're going to be talking California. We've got two Mule Deer Foundation employees here. One new, one old, very old.
Very old, very
great.
And
we're going to be talking about what's going on in California. We have Kevin Zieman, who's MDF's stewardship coordinator for the West Coast.
And you may recognize Kevin because Kevin came to us from the Forest Service, which we're going to get in, but we did talk to Kevin last year as well. So thank you, Kevin, for being on with us.
Thanks for having me.
And we also have Randy Morrison, the famous Randy Morrison, who is MDF field director for California and one of the senior directors for MDF. Welcome, Randy.
Welcome,
Well,
Randy.
thank you very much for having me.
So, California, what's going on, guys? I saw it burned up last year.
Again.
Yeah, before we jump into that, Kevin, last time we talked to you, you were with the U.S. Forest Service doing stewardship and coordination with MDF. Now you're an employee, and it seemed like it happened at a good time for you.
Yeah, and remind us a little again about what the stewardship part is, what you're doing.
Yeah, so I made a leap of faith after 13 years with the U.S. Forest Service, jumped over to the Mule Deer Foundation. Very excited to be a new employee with Mule Deer Foundation with everything we're doing with stewardship, jumping on board. So with stewardship agreements, we're going out on the ground. We're using federal money. We're using match money from either state.
Kevin, can I stop you right there? Stewardship.
Yeah.
Habitat projects, right?
Habitat.
Things that give us the ability to make habitat better, right?
Absolutely. Habitat restoration. We have a focus on helping with those large catastrophic fires with fuel breaks. We also have a emphasis on doing light thinning, mastication on the ground where they actually chew the trees up and helps kind of create those natural openings that mule deer absolutely love. So
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. Some of our listeners may not make that link between stewardship and habitat work, so just wanted to be clear.
Absolutely. And there's a big cost to doing that type of work out there, and just doing a couple acres here and there, it doesn't really cut the mustard. So we want
that's that random act of kindness that we are trying to get away from now.
Yeah, exactly. And so what we're doing, especially here in California, me and Randy here, we're trying to get more acres done of that important restoration effort that we're doing out there, and so we're really excited. I'm really excited to join the team. Bring some state dollars. We got a lot of California state dollars we're bringing to the table. We got a lot of Forest Service dollars that the region and the local districts are bringing to the table, so we can increase that pace and scale. That is a big phrase we like to use with the Forest Service and Mule Deer Foundation, so we can do more work on the ground.
Well, and this is the concept of active habitat management, active forest management, where you're not just leaving things. There's a lot of folks that say, well, we'll just leave it. Nature will take its course. Well, nature has been taking its course, right?
And that's been the problem,
right.
Quite frankly, is that we have left it alone for so long that our forests are overgrown, over thick, decadent, and with very little food value for our wildlife.
By decadent, you mean that's an actual technical term, meaning that they're overgrown, they don't have the nutritional value anymore.
To the wildlife that they did when they were young and vigorous.
These are trees that do best with some degree
They're
of
ones that
disturbance.
are in hospice care waiting to die.
Yep.
Actually, that's correct. From the standpoint of an ungulate on the ground, ungulate meaning four-legged critter who can't fly, an overgrown forest or an old-growth forest literally might as well be a paved parking lot. There's nothing on the ground for them other than thermal cover from either heat or cold, which is important, but they only need a small amount of their habitat to be that old growth or late succession, as it's called, habitat. And the key focus of our stewardship projects now are to set back succession in many of these areas where our forests are overgrown to try and slow the advance of these wildfires that have just become catastrophic. Fire is our friend, but catastrophic fire is not in most of our.
So by doing that,
habitats.
you're taking competition away for nutrients and water.
Correct.
You're letting sunlight hit the forest floor so the lower level vegetation can flourish. That's our food.
That's exactly right.
And
That's
then
exactly right.
you're creating a thinner forest that doesn't burn so hot.
That doesn't burn so hot or burn so big. The reason our fires have been so large is because we've had vast tracts of overloaded fuel in our forests. And once they get going, you literally cannot stop them. All you can do is get out of their way.
So how much of that was the decline in the timber and lumber industry from world competition and overforesting, and how much of that is just California regulation that's getting in the way?
Well, it's both. Some of it is California regulation, but quite frankly, probably the biggest thing, and this is contrary to what an awful lot of people in America believe. The Smokey the Bear initiative was, quite frankly, probably the worst thing that ever happened to forest management, because it was prevent fire, prevent all fire, stop fire.
Fire is bad.
Fire is bad. And fire is critical in most of our habitats throughout the West. Fire has to happen on a regular basis in order for those forests to remain healthy.
So maybe we need to bring that Marshall the Mule Deer character in and start talking about good fire.
Exactly.
And we get Marshall Johnson to voice over that guy. So
down in the southeast, they have Burner Bob, a Bob White Quail costume to talk about how,
exactly.
burning the undergrowth and the low-level prescribed burns is actually good for your habitat.
It is, and a lot of our partners, our BLM and Forest Service, are actually putting that into our stewardship or any of our partnership agreements, is to actually get that burning process done through prescribed burning or whatever means, pile burning if we need to pile up the stuff.
Thinning and then burning the pile.
And they're even asking the partners themselves, hey, could you come to the table and bring some people to do that burning, because we don't have enough staff to do that, and we'd love to do that so we can get that
well,
done.
and last year Congress addressed the emergency wildfire issue from the Forest Service, making it a natural disaster like hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, so that we don't have to use all of the Forest Service's program money to fight the yearly fires. And I think we're going to see a change maybe in some more proactive forestry and habitat management, because they're going to have the resources to do it.
Absolutely. With the fire borrowing fix, if that truly comes to pass as it's been designed to do, and all of the prevention money currently is being borrowed to fight fires because they're so large and so expensive, there has been a fix put into place for that this year. Hopefully that will take effect and be real rather than
well, the appropriate bills
political.
just went through, so I think, I haven't looked this week, but because the shutdown was averted, we got an interior and agriculture bill, so I do think that money is probably out there in that emergency firefighting fund.
That's going to make a big difference.
Yeah.
And
that's going to help.
There's another big thing that I'd really like to talk about and give California a really big shout out for, and it's the California Climate Initiative. It is a grant that was put out there. They just finished their phase 2 process of going out with this grant. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, and the Mule Deer Foundation specifically has been able to take advantage of a couple $1 million to get some work done up on the Plumas. We're hoping to do a big
Kevin,
project
is that
up on the
state
Plumas.
money?
That is state money,
Okay.
yes. And it's all about carbon sequestration and how when you have, when you reduce the impact of large catastrophic fires, how it's worth doing this restoration ahead of time to potentially stop or slow these larger fires. So we're taking advantage of that to do some of this habitat restoration, and it can be millions of dollars, because with these stewardship agreements we need a match as a Mule Deer Foundation, and it cannot be from the federal side, so it has to come from another source. So when the states come in, me and Randy have been very proactive about the big game management grant that's inside of California. We've definitely taken advantage of it with the Mule Deer Foundation to do some work. Those have a cap limit around $1 million, maybe $1.4 million. When you have these grants out there for hundreds of millions of dollars, you have a lot of groups going after this dollars, and they say, hey, we need some help. How are we going to get all this work done? And we can raise our hands as Mule Deer Foundation, say, hey, we want to come out there, help in this really prime area where there's really good mule deer habitat, and we're seeing an issue with over fuel loading, or needing some mastication done on the ground, or even the lower land areas, the BLM, where there's juniper problems. We want to work on some fuel reductions inside of the juniper, increase grasses, forbs, all kinds of opportunities out there with this grant, and we're going to take full advantage of it. And so I do give them a shout out for doing that.
And that volunteer, as a reminder, that becomes what's called in kind, so that the hours that Mule Deer Foundation chapter volunteers do on the ground is in lieu of money. You can
bet.
you
In-kind
quantify the
match.
number of people that are there, the amount of hours they work, and it's counted as an in-kind match. So that's not money that the Mule Deer Foundation or other groups have to put up. It's volunteer hours. So every person you're getting on the landscape makes that much more difference in these projects.
One of the other key things about the stewardship program in California is that for years, the way that the Mule Deer Foundation has been set up, a portion of the fundraising, the net money that is raised at our local chapter level, a portion of that goes to chapter rewards, where the chapter can decide on a project to help fund. For the history of the Mule Deer Foundation, what we have done is gone to the generally federal agencies, BLM or the Forest Service, and say, we have a few $1,000s here. We would like to help you do a project, help fund your project. What would happen then is they would give us a proposal and say, we've got a $50,000 project. We'd like to ask you for $5,000 to help us do that project. Our chapter rewards from our local chapters have gone to help with that project. That is certainly of benefit to deer, certainly of benefit to the people who attend our banquets to see that we do what is happening with our fundraising. But with our stewardship program, we can now leverage those chapter rewards dollars into something far greater, because where we need a match in most of these grants that we do, much of our stewardship projects require a match of some sort. We can pool our chapter rewards dollars, use those as a match into a much larger grant or project that then those dollars can, we can take $5,000 now and turn it into, add it with three or four different chapters and turn it into $1 million project that might affect 1,000 acres.
So the benefit of that is you're not postage stamping a small $5,000 project.
Exactly.
But you're working on something much bigger.
Yes.
And it's all working towards the common goal of watershed restoration, habitat improvement, mule deer enhancement. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So our chapters actually have a lot more power than they used to in terms of getting bigger things done.
So do your volunteers respond by getting out on the ground with these projects when you present it in this new age?
Absolutely they do. Unfortunately, in California, a lot of the places where we have large chapters are places where we have very little public ground, and it is several hours to get to the public ground. So many of our chapters are really, truly fundraising
oriented.
Correct. They're a tool to raise funds to do work elsewhere.
Yeah.
In the
well,
areas,
I mean, it gives you an opportunity maybe do a weekend, a camp weekend, and do some bonding stuff.
Yeah,
You're
me and
absolutely
Randy have
right.
talked about doing that.
Exactly as a kind of a retreat / project.
Maybe a campfire, a little beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
guitar
Chip
come out.
And all
Chip
those
some
guys
wood.
in those more urban areas, that's where they're going
Absolutely.
to hunt. That's where they
That's
need
where
to
they're
go.
going.
So they're passionate about it as well. It may be a little bit farther commitment, but they know
Yes.
those areas. That's where they go and recreate.
And
and hunt.
typically, in our areas where we have rural chapters, our volunteers there spend a great deal of time out in the woods working on Forest Service or BLM projects on weekends, cutting trees, burning brush, etc.
So, Randy, 2018.
Yes.
I saw the project fact sheet flash up behind us. How much did you spend? Drum roll.
We spent $1.2 million in on-the-ground projects in the state of California in 2018, which is probably as much money as we have spent in the last 10 years.
And you were telling me yesterday that's 3 to 4 times what you brought in from the fundraising.
Yes, it's over 3 times the amount of money that we net in the state in fundraising. So for anyone who has the misconception that money is raised in this or that state and it all goes to headquarters in Utah, That's not the case. We actually got back threefold what we net. So,
and that number is only going to expand.
It is.
We worked hard in the state this last year. In 2019, we've got projects on board that could potentially double that for 2019. What work we get done.
Very real possibility.
And Kevin, you're working on multiple new agreements right now. You said upwards to possibly $10 million might be coming towards the MDF to put on the ground through your new stewardship projects. Tell us a little about where those are at and what type of projects those are going to be.
Yeah, that sounds good. So the first, I'll give a shout out again back to Randy here. It's the Jawbone project. We were successful in securing
the Jawbone.
Yes, it's Jawbone Ridge. It's in outside of Sonora, California, and one of those really good in-kind where we have volunteers. The local chapter there, Bill Youngman, he's going out. He's going to help us implement that project. So that's about $350,000, $400,000 that we're hoping to get on the books this year and get done. Then there's some real excitement going on up north. So the Plumas National Forest, we met with them last year. And
so for us non-California, Plumas is north half. What's the nearest big city that we would recognize?
Honestly, the nearest big city would be Reno, but the biggest city in California would be Susanville.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's that northeast corner there, yeah.
So this section is just south of Susanville. It's on an X zone, so it's one of those limited hunt zones, which is really cool. And it's going to be between 5,000 and 10,000 acres of work in there. Some of it's going to be biomass, where we're going to actually take the smaller trees and bring them to a landing. And they get to a landing, they grind it up, put it on chip bands, and set it down the road, and they're going to create energy out of that. How cool is that?
That's right. They have that hog fuel plant in Susanville.
Yes. Honey Lake Power, there's an avenue for us to put it there, which we're really excited about that. Again, good partners, sub-partners that are helping us get that done. So there's probably going to be between $5 and $7 million of work that we're going to be helping with out there. Again, very excited about that. We're also looking at doing some blacktail work over on the northwestern side of the state. We're really excited about expanding into blacktail.
So blacktail deer in California, northern California, coastal range?
Typically from about San Jose north to the Oregon border, west of Interstate 5, which kind of goes down the middle of the state. That's Columbian blacktail territory. And much of the southern range of the Columbian blacktail is private ground, but in the northern area of our blacktail is primarily public ground, National Forest ground, and used to be very large timber production ground, not so much anymore. They used to call it the Deer Factory of California, and now it is a sea of mature trees. So it's an area that is in desperate need. We've raised tens of thousands of deer there historically, and it is in desperate need of help.
And that could be multi-agency. We could have some BLM. There's some BLM down there as well. So we may have some Forest Service BLM. That's why I love my new job, is I don't have to just work with one agency. I get to expand all over the place. I could go do something on the Forest Service, do something on BLM, help some state lands. It's going to be really exciting.
So I know, Kevin, I told you this in the meeting the other day, our agency meeting, but Randy, I don't know if you know this. In the 2018 Farm Bill, the Mule Deer Foundation and many of its conservation partners worked to get the Sage Grouse and Mule Deer Habitat Enhancement Act included into the Farm Bill.
Correct.
It was included. It now is law. And that's not you.
It's not me today.
Okay. We're laughing because yesterday Randy was using the PA system when we were recording podcasts.
And he didn't understand why we were frustrated at him talking over. So now that he's actually on the microphone, he'll understand.
Yeah, so Section 8611 of the Forestry Title of the Farm Bill is the Sage Grouse and Mule Deer Conservation Act. It now gives us the ability to use a categorical exclusion underneath the National Environmental Policy Act law for those projects that are known benefits to mule deer and sage grouse habitat. So those things we're already doing out there, up to 4,500 acres. So it's going to give us the ability to streamline some of the administrative process. Still working with the Forest Service and BLM, still working with the not trying to go around anything, but maybe get projects out on the ground faster. And the other thing that it's going to do, it's going to set up a monitoring and maintenance program, 20 years for those projects, so that we can monitor the effectiveness and go back in at later time to maintain the habitat structure that we created through these projects.
That is incredibly important because that has been the one part with habitat restoration that, in my opinion, has been lacking historically, is we would go in and do projects, then we would leave and move on to the next one, and never really know 5 years, 10 years down the line how much effect that project really had. Did it make a difference? Could we have done it better? Some projects have had a wonderful monitoring and maintenance plan, but many have not in the past. So I think that is really going to help us upgrade the type of projects we do in the future.
Yeah, and for those of you folks listening, Miles Moretti, the president and CEO of the Mule Deer Foundation, was the instrumental person on getting that through.
Yeah,
and
if
you see him,
no doubt,
thank him for that.
That is what do we call a game changer, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And then there is another aspect that you brought forth, and that is whenever there's a product in the Forest Service or the BLM, we got to pay for that product to get it removed, and this is going to help the Mule Deer Foundation remove that quote-unquote product, because we can now say it's got the value is not necessarily the wood itself, the value is the restoration.
Right.
And so where we would have to pay a little bit here, a little bit there to get this out, it's more focused towards getting it removed, getting it out of there, which helps us because that can actually hinder a project when we have some timber out there that doesn't have a lot of value. Now we got to go find someone, try to get some value off of it. If we can just subsidize that with grants and not have to worry about that product itself, I think that really is another one of those game changers where now we focus on the restoration, we get that work done, and not have that side entity that could slow us down.
Yeah, so the provision also allows us to use any product taken off underneath this new tool as a biofuel if you can sell it. There's no prohibition that typically would exist against using that product. So you can recoup your costs. And a group like the Mule Deer Foundation always dumps any money back into that project or back into the agency or back into new projects. So.
And that is absolutely key. You're correct. Yeah. That is very key in that any product value that there is from either biomass or from timber harvest, none of that money is money that the Mule Deer Foundation keeps. That just means we can do more acres because we now have more money to do more.
Yeah, most of the rules are it's a zero-sum game.
Correct.
Yes.
You can pay yourself back for what you spent to do it, and then the agency gets the rest of the money, or you go do more acres or do another project.
Right.
So if there's any Forest Service or BLM or state Fish and Game, or even any private foresters and rangeland managers, wildlife biologists out there, if you're looking for maybe a new tool, talk to your line officers, reach out and see if this new tool, Section 8611, and the categorical exclusion that's going to be written by the federal agencies for this is something you can apply. And, when in doubt, pick up the phone or send an email to the Mule Deer Foundation, to Kevin or myself or anyone, and we'll try to help you through some of this stuff.
Well, and I know we're focused on California, but stewardship projects are growing a lot. And Kevin, you told me earlier this week that the podcast we did where we were talking about stewardship last year, you had people reach out to you from different states say, hey, is this something that I could do?
Absolutely.
So what can they do to get more information, or how can we help continue to let this grow?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm working in Oregon, Washington, Montana, helping Stan Baker here in Utah and Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, we're everywhere. But to reach out, send me an email. Kevin@muledeer.org is a really good way to get a hold of me. I'd be happy to answer some emails. We're excited. I would also like to accent any Mule Deer Foundation volunteers out there. Go to your local chapters. Tell them you're interested in projects. Tell them you're interested in doing some work on the ground to help stewardship, any other kind of partnerships you have on the ground. We'd love to have you. I'm excited to be here.
So Randy, going to come back to you. Your chapters, how are they doing?
Very well. Very well. Our chapters in general are doing very well. We had the best fundraising year in the history of the Mule Deer Foundation in California, and that's pretty incredible. I'm looking forward to 2019 and think that we may do more this year than we did last year, and that's really very exciting. The Mule Deer Foundation is on the rise in California. Our stock is increasing. The Department of Fish and Wildlife is now often calling us for our opinion, which on various issues, which is We've come a long way.
Refreshing.
I haven't
we're
looked into map
going
lately.
farther.
Do you have any chapters in like L.A., San Diego, San Francisco, those bigger metropolitan areas at all?
Interestingly enough, I have a chapter in San Jose, which is
That's a suburb,
if you will, of San
San
Francisco.
Francisco.
It's actually larger than San Francisco.
Yeah, that's
now.
by Silicon Valley. There,
Correct.
yeah.
That is Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And we just recently started a chapter, our first Southern California chapter. We started a chapter in San Diego, and they are going to be doing their first fundraising event this August. So it's really our first Southern California chapter, and I'm really.
But you know,
looking
maybe
forward
I'm
to
going to
it.
have to come down and talk turkey
That's
with
what
you.
everybody's
And,
saying.
you know, we can go out on a tuna boat and talk a little business here.
I was thinking we needed to do a stewardship agreement because then I can go up there, maybe masticate some of that small material they have. And then we go to the
masticate
beach.
some
Go to-
sushi.
and spend the nights on the beach. That'd be kind of cool.
Nice. All right, guys. We've really enjoyed having you on the table today. Thank you so much for all the
thank you,
hard
guys.
work. I
Thank
mean,
you
it's
very
just
much.
remarkable to see everything that's growing and changing in California and the opportunities we're having, not just in California, but otherwise in stewardship as well. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks,
very
guys.
much for the opportunity.
Kevin, welcome aboard. We're lucky to have you, and
Glad
you
to
know,
be here.
Randy, you're the old
timer.
gray beard that teaches
Yeah.
the rest of us how to get things done. So
10th year.
But you know, their beards almost match. So Kevin, you
I'm
might
working
catch
on
up,
it. I need
right?
a little more gray, and I'll be there.
Until next time, this is Jody Stemler.
and I'm Steve Belinda. Thank you for Talking Mule Deer.
Thanks for Talking Mule Deer with Steve Belinda and Jody Stemler. The Mule Deer Foundation is the only conservation group in North America dedicated to restoring, improving, and protecting mule deer and black-tailed deer and their habitat. MDF is a strong voice for hunters in access, wildlife management, and conservation policy issues. To find out more, visit www.muledeer.org and stay tuned for the next episode of Talking Mule Deer.